So good evening, everyone, and welcome to this Township of West Lincoln Council meeting. We're starting at 5 o'clock, so it threw me off a little bit as it threw off some of the others. Councillor Riley is coming. He'll be a little bit late. Councillor Trombetta is absent. He's away on work-related business, and so he's not going to be here at all this evening. And everybody else got here, but I will confess that everybody is still eating a bite to eat along the way, so bear with us on that. So I'm going to just say to members of the public that your cell phones need to also be turned off, please. Everybody's ready? Okay, so I'm going to ask you, you're ready, Kevin, with O Canada? So we're going to start with the singing of O Canada. Please stand if you're able to do so. Smithville Christian High School this evening. So I am going to say that we are starting early this evening. We're going to follow our regular meeting procedures, but we do have a special presentation. As residents are well aware, the topic of potential amalgamation has been on everybody's lips lately, and the West Lincoln, of course, is doing their best to gather information. Tonight is an education session when we get ready for that, and it actually is not something we're going into closed session for, as we sometimes do, for education of council purposes, but this is also education for the public. And so we're hoping that either people are joining in this evening, or certainly, as we know, many of our residents watch the meeting after the fact. We see that we have far more hits on our videos, our movies of our meetings, but people who want to know and learn of this meeting will certainly follow along. So before I begin, I'd like to make the following comments. The public may submit comments for matters that are on the agenda to jpaylove@westlincoln.ca before 4:30 on the day of the meeting. Comments submitted will be considered as public information and read into the public record. And this meeting is being live streamed, I've already alluded to that, as well as recorded, and will be available on the Township's website. So we'll begin, as always, with the land acknowledgement statement. The Township of West Lincoln, being part of Niagara Region, is situated on treaty land. This land is steeped in the rich history of the First Nations, such as the Haudenosaunee, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. There are many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The Township of West Lincoln, as part of the Regional Municipality of Niagara, stands with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands on which we live. And we'll go now to our opening petition, and Councillor Maychak, you have that this evening.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We meet to serve our community. We use our resources wisely and well to represent all members of our community fairly, to make decisions that promote the common good. We recognize our responsibility to the past and the future and the rights and needs of both individuals and community. As trusted servants, may we act wisely and well.
Thank you, Councillor. Members of Council, are there any changes in orders of items on the agenda this evening? Seeing none, only in jest. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest and/or conflict of interest? And so, Mr. Clerk, at this time, do we need to also, on Councillor Riley's behalf, point out that he has a conflict?
Through the chair, Councillor Riley informed me that he will be declaring a conflict. However, he can do that when he comes back to the meeting.
When he comes back in? Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure that we didn't miss that on his behalf. So item 6 on our agenda is always a request to address items on the agenda. Under 6.7 public of our procedural bylaw, public comments at council are under the following regulations. There shall be no comments from the public permitted at council unless A, a specific appointment has been scheduled, or B, an item is included under the other business or communications or appointments section of the agenda and relates to a matter which would normally be dealt with at committee. So I'm going to ask if there are any members of the public present who wish to address a specific item on the agenda as permitted by section 6.7 of the procedural bylaw. And not seeing anyone, I'm going to go to you, Kevin. Is there anyone online?
Not seeing any, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you. So that does take us then to appointments and presentations. And we have with us this evening Jason Raynor from Learners LLP, and he is going to give us a presentation on municipal governance and restructuring. So it's general information for members of council and also for members of the public, as I mentioned earlier, who might want to view this later. So welcome. So members of council, while we're getting that set up, I'll ask you, you have in front of you a written presentation so that you have a sample of what's going to come. If you will jot, if you have questions and things as we're going along, jot them down. And then we will double check before Mr. Raynor gets started to see what he wants council to do, whether it's questions all at the end or partway through or whatever his preference is.
Well, thanks very much, Your Worship, members of council. Delighted to be here in the beautiful community of West Lincoln. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I know that as a community and as a region, the last month or so has been quite tumultuous, to say the least. I don't propose to take you through in any detail what you're already very familiar with, but appreciate that that context is important for the discussion that we're going to have today. As Your Worship noted, this is an education session, so certainly happy to bring the Municipal Act components around municipal restructuring and the different avenues that exist for that. And certainly happy to talk about any questions you may have and perhaps offer some suggestions about the types of things that municipalities consider in general when these types of issues are before them, whether they like it or not. Happy to take questions throughout, Your Worship, if that's helpful. I'll certainly take your guidance on that. The slide deck, as you know, isn't terribly long, but happy to go into further depth on any of those specific issues as we get going.
Thank you.
So let's start at the beginning. What is restructuring? What do we mean by restructuring, at least from a legal perspective? Section 172 of the Municipal Act is up on the screen in front of you. I don't propose to read it to you, but it is the sort of all-encompassing term that we use for any kind of reworking of municipal boundaries or the governance side when that's being considered. So amalgamating and separating and annexing, dissolving, all of those things come under this broad umbrella under Section 172 of the Municipal Act called restructuring. And at a very high level, there are essentially two main pathways that restructuring has occurred in our province over its illustrious history. The first is under the Municipal Act, and I'm going to talk about that in more detail in a moment. And the second is when the province passes very specific legislation, like it did with the City of Toronto Act. And when it does that, in terms of passing specific legislation, there is no set process. But in recognition, I think, that the province wants to put structure around what these kind of conversations look like, what expectations there ought to be with councils and with the public. There's a number of specific sections in the Municipal Act and some regulations that have set out that process. And so we'll talk a little bit more about what that looks like. There are three main overarching options when it comes to municipal restructuring, any of those things covered by that definition. The first is a municipal restructuring proposal, and again, we'll talk more about each of these options in more detail. That's under Section 173 of the Municipal Act. Secondly, the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing can establish a restructuring commission, and those what the commission can do and what it's required to do under the statute, we'll talk more about. And thirdly, there is, in limited circumstances, an ability to apply to the Ontario Land Tribunal, which could approve specific type of restructuring, but it doesn't apply in the Niagara region. The context that's required for the OLT application just doesn't apply here. So it has to do with single tiers, for example, dissolving, or organized districts up in the north. There is an opportunity for residents to get together and apply to the OLT to introduce a municipality. So none of those specific circumstances would apply, as far as I can tell, to the Niagara region. So we'll skip over those. But the first two sections, the first two options, we'll go into a little bit more detail. So when we're talking about a restructuring proposal, this is where one or more municipalities would get together and provide to the minister a recommendation around how the structure of the governance in a particular area should change. So this is initiated by one municipality essentially requesting the restructuring. And again, this can involve land, and typically does, boundary adjustments of some kind, but it can also separately, or in addition to, include the actual governance changes that are being proposed. So that's important to bear in mind. So typically with a proposal, one or more municipalities, typically more, would negotiate a draft restructuring proposal and include any details about a boundary adjustment if that's being discussed and on the table. I've recently assisted two municipalities negotiate this kind of a boundary adjustment. It's not uncommon across Ontario, particularly when you get into issues of servicing, economic development, joint shared areas for emergency response, for example. It often begins sort of as a shared service conversation, and then, at some point, depending on how much money is involved in terms of infrastructure going into the ground, municipalities sometimes get to the conclusion, or come to their own conclusion, that a restructuring proposal could be beneficial. And the ministry has set out a number of sort of forms and specific details that must be included in any proposal that's being put forward. I don't propose to get into any of those details, but that you should know that there is a specific form and it has to follow a certain process when you're doing a restructuring proposal. So again, in terms of the required process as set out in the legislation, the municipalities, if it's a restructuring proposal, will do the negotiating and will do the drafting of an agreement between the municipalities. I think best practice in this area is to provide as much detail as possible, to leave no stone unturned, so to speak, so that there's no question about what's being proposed ultimately to the minister. To the extent that there are gaps in that analysis or that proposal, the ministry itself and the minister his or herself can fill those gaps. And so, our advice to clients is always to be as specific as you possibly can be about what it is that the parties are interested in, should they be pursuing this kind of a restructuring proposal. As you can imagine, there are requirements under the Act for public consultation, which is obviously critical in these kinds of discussion, or ought to be. So an affected council must give notice and hold at least one public meeting, although you can, of course, hold more if a restructuring proposal is being proposed. And the ministry and the minister can actually designate specific individuals or specific bodies that should be consulted as part of that proposal. So for example, speaking to the Conservation Authority, or if you have a joint, library board or a joint emergency services board, those are the kinds of consultations that the ministry might direct that you have to include as part of those discussions. And then really critically, there is under the statute a requirement around what we call a double majority vote. And so what this means, and you probably are very familiar with this at this point, but essentially, in order to move forward with a restructuring proposal where there are a number of municipalities involved, a majority of the municipalities representing more than half of the electors in that area must agree with the restructuring proposal that's being put forward. So a majority of the municipalities, so if we had 8 municipalities being considered, for example, you would need at least 5 of those municipalities approving the restructuring proposal. But even with that 5 out of 8, the majority of the municipalities, if they didn't represent more than half of the electors in that area, you would not be able to move forward with the proposal in this restructuring section of the Municipal Act. Maybe I'll pause there. Is there any questions about those 3 key components of the process? Otherwise, we'll happy to move forward.
I would just like to ask, is this, on your recommendation, what should have happened in the first place with the, because you started your presentation with Bob Gale's letter, which sent us
Fair.
down the wrong direction in the first place. So should they, in your opinion, have actually gone through this process? And of course, the part that is most interesting to me is the public consultation, of which there was little to none.
It's a great question, Your Worship. Appreciating that I'm not in the minds of the former chair, it is quite clear in the Municipal Act how restructuring is meant to be approached.
So you didn't have to go searching for this. It's very obviously there.
It's very obviously there, and to be fair, there are a number of these different pathways. One of which is when the municipalities together agree, or at least a majority of them agree, with at least half of the electors agree that they want to move forward with this kind of a proposal. But it's not the only way, and so we'll talk a bit more about that.
I think it is the way they thought was assured. Okay, thank you. Anyone else with something at this point? Councilor Rayner.
Thank you. Through the chair. I heard, and I don't know if it's true or not, but I heard the Premier said that I will only go ahead with amalgamation if the municipalities want that. So I don't think this is the direction that I'm getting the impression of that they wish to go. They want to go to the other one, which bypasses that and does everything else. This is a proper way involving the public consultations and everybody's in agreement, not being forced down their throat. But his comment was, I'll only do it if the majority of municipalities want to do it. And obviously this hasn't been true. So I'm confused as to why we're even proceeding any farther, since if his verbal public announcement is honest and true, it's already stopped because 8 of the 12 said no. Then what is the purpose of this at this point, unless there's something in this that I'm missing?
Through you, Your Worship, yeah, an excellent question. Likely goes beyond my capacity to answer, Councillor, because if I could predict where the province was going, I wouldn't be doing a different job. But I take your point, and I think the question and the recommendation I have for you, from an education perspective, is to be ready for whatever may come down the pipe, either from the province or from the region or from your neighbors. Because I think what is unfortunate in amalgamation and annexation and those kinds of discussions is that there is a bit of a tendency to shoot first and then aim, if I can be so bold. When in fact, there are a number of reasons put forward about why, restructuring can be beneficial to communities. But I think too often the data is like an afterthought, or it comes later, right? Whereas my suggestion to you, and certainly when we look around the province in terms of best practices, it's being armed with that data, as soon as you can, and being conscious of what the data is that can help you make these decisions should they present themselves or opportunities present themselves. But you're right that as far as we know, the province has said, there's no proposal moving forward at this time, as far as we know.
One other thing, Madam Chair, that I just recalled was, I watch the news every night at 6 o'clock on Channel 11. And last week, they were talking about this new bill that the Premier wants to pass to take away the rights of us to determine what's going on, because they're removing the ability for us to investigate, and Greenbelt and everything else is going to be hidden. And at the very end, the comment came, and the Premier, Doug Ford, still wishes to go to do amalgamation in Niagara. And I thought, well, hold on a minute. That just went against what was said earlier, where I'll only do it if there's a majority. So that was the most recent comment on Channel 11 last week, was he's still in favor of amalgamation. But what does that mean?
So Councillor, just so that you are aware as well, at the time I think that this was done, I think that they thought they had a double majority. I think they thought they had 7 municipalities who would be in favor, and certainly they were the municipalities with the largest block of voters. So I think when it began, both the Premier and the former chair were under the impression that that was the situation at the time. And they were not looking at new public consultation, because they were assuming that in past years, back as far as 2019, that had happened. Okay, so I think that probably was still the understanding at that time. I also heard that on the news, that he was continuing, and we're just waiting. We are under the impression and the understanding that a new chair will be appointed, and then this will pick up where it left off. So,
Madam Chair, it's almost like I didn't win the first round. I got blindsided and surprised, but I'm not giving up. I'm going to get this regardless how I do it. That's my impression, and that's not very nice, considering he was open to a democratic process of do the people want it, and I will respect that. And now it sounds like I'll only respect it because I thought they were going to give it to me anyways.
perhaps.
That's the way it's coming across, which is dirty, underhanded, and not respecting the democratic process.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Chichok, I saw your hand.
Yes, and I'm very glad that I put it up now, because regardless of what happens, there is always about 45 sides to every one of these issues. But I thought tonight was an education session where we were learning about, through our legal representation, how to best be prepared for the inevitable. That doesn't mean you have all the answers, and it doesn't mean that you can possibly know what was behind every amalgamation in this province. But I do believe that all we're looking at today is the options we have on how ready we want to be. Is that, through you, Madam
Exactly.
Chair, is this what I'm here for tonight? Because I didn't come to call names and spit at people while we were here. I think that's perhaps a little premature. So if we're there, I would like to take my leave. But if we're here to understand what else could happen, and in fact, it could be said that in this round of events, that the people who were looking to do the amalgamation may have felt that they were the proxies for the voters at the front of the line, because they had already taken a poll of the public. No one criticized or said that it was out of date. No one was bothered with that. But we have to go through all these
The
steps.
process, yep.
And I could pretty much say I'm the proxy for Ward 2, along with my colleague. And we might think we know, but I'm not sure that they would say the same thing. So I'm just saying there are things we're going to have to master as we go through this. And I know my colleague across the table is anxious to speak, so I'll be back to this, because I think fundamentally there are many things that we can misunderstand throughout the entirety of what it is you're trying to tell us. And if I'm wrong, please tell me. It won't be the first time.
I think we've seen the agreement that you're not wrong. We are here to find out what's going on, what we can do, and how we should be prepared moving forward. Councillor Mason.
Through you, Madam Chair, to our presentation. I'll carry on from Councillor Chichuk's comment. Like, how can you assume that, let's say, a majority of councils would like to restructure, and I'm not sure that's the case, but let's say it is, that they do truly represent the majority of the elector? Because, as she said, and I agree with her, we could collectively believe something, but the people in West Lincoln might not. So I'm not sure that they're getting their vote or their voice heard when it's only elected representatives who are making the decision on their behalf either way.
Comment, Mr. Rayner?
Yeah, it's an excellent question, and it makes me think, and I don't know the answer to this, but how many times an amalgamation question has ended up as a referendum question in an election? I probably should have looked that up, and I apologize. But you're right. Short of that, you don't know, for sure.
Thank you. Continue on, please.
Certainly, Your Worship. So in terms of just finishing off this first approach to municipal restructuring, in terms of this putting forward a proposal, the way this sort of wraps up is that there is a resolution that would be required from all of the affected councils, and that's submitted into the ministry. And if it's adopted by the minister, there is an order that would meet all of the statutory requirements as set out in Section 173 of the Municipal Act. If the minister is of the opinion that the proposal does not meet all of the statutory requirements, for example, if there is some question about whether public consultation was in fact done as required, then the minister can return the proposal to those municipalities to reconsider and address those requirements that, in his or her opinion, were not met. But assuming an order does get made, the order, of course, has to be published in the Ontario Gazette and filed with the affected municipalities, and the municipalities must make the order available to the public. Nothing surprising there in terms of how that would go through. I'll talk a little bit about what the implementation looks like just near the end of the presentation, but just hold those questions if you're curious about them. The second way of approaching this main way under the Municipal Act, as I mentioned, is through a restructuring commission. And this hasn't been done very often in the province, but there is this structure under the statute to essentially set up, this independent body that is meant to study the needs of the communities in a particular area and come up with a really comprehensive proposal considering all of those needs, and essentially the commission is appointed by the ministry and the minister to develop that proposal for a particular geographic area. The process is fairly similar in terms of the steps that are required. So, for example, the commission will consult with all of the municipalities in the area and any of the specific bodies that the ministry prescribes that they ought to consult with. They prepare a draft proposal, which is distributed to the municipalities for their comment, and that draft proposal is made public. They must hold at least one public meeting, this is the commission itself, and invite written submissions. And after considering that feedback, they finalize a proposal if they still believe that it makes sense to move forward with some kind of restructuring. And they can issue a commissioner's order to implement the restructuring, assuming all of the statutory requirements are met. And of course, the same publication requirements exist for that order, that the municipalities would receive a copy and would make it public. So it is an interesting process insofar as the commission that's struck is both the investigator and the adjudicator in a sense. So the commission considers the data and the evidence and then ultimately can issue the order itself, obviously with input and consultation with the ministry and the minister. I can't imagine a commissioner's order being issued without the minister being on side with it, but in theory the process is set up so that the commission would consider all of those inputs. If you're looking for a handy-dandy handout, This resource is available, and the link is in the document, and it compares the two approaches, the commissioner approach, which we just reviewed, and the first one that I went through with you, which is the municipalities themselves putting a restructuring proposal together, and it summarizes those steps in a fairly comprehensive way. And allows you to compare them, and you'll see that, again, as I said, they're very, very similar in terms of what actually happens in terms of the process. It's important to note, as I mentioned, that the province does have the final say in terms of restructuring. So as much as they've bound themselves to the statute and the process that they've set out in the statute, there is no question that it is the province's authority and jurisdiction to make decisions about municipal structuring. And this was stated very clearly by the Court of Appeal in 1997 in the East York Borough in Ontario case, where the court made it clear that based on the Constitution, we have two recognized levels of government, the federal level and the province, and municipalities are creatures of the province, and so the province can decide how to structure those appropriately. But the province would be ill-advised not to follow its own processes that it set out in legislation, because they would be subject to judicial review, and the courts would intervene, presumably. So we know that there have been a number of amalgamations and other annexations and other processes. As you know, I think I was the former CAO in Innisfil shortly after Barrie annexed a portion of Innisfil with no compensation. That's still a sore point in Innisfil, as you can imagine. So what do we know about these processes and the claims that they would be more effective, more efficient, more cost-effective? So I commend to you the 2015 paper done by Professors Lydia Miljan and Zachary Spicer, entitled Municipal Amalgamation in Ontario. And just a great read. It's a little bit dated now, to be fair. It's 10 years old, but we haven't actually had a lot of restructuring in the last 10 years. And they reviewed the data that's submitted to the province, the FIRs, the financial information reporting, and a number of other data sets to compare pre-restructuring to post-restructuring to get a sense of whether or not the amalgamations or annexations or whatever they were in terms of restructuring lived up to what the claims were. And they made a number of findings. For example, they found that the promised cost savings and efficiency gains did not materialize in either urban or rural Ontario. They found that the tax burdens, in fact, often increased. Efforts to hold taxes low sometimes led to significant increases in long-term debt, shifting fiscal pressures rather than reducing them. Service and compensation costs increased. The service implemented amalgamations were often done too quickly and providing less than ideal circumstances to actually provide for appropriate integration of services. And interestingly, the rural and the urban outcomes were similar. Both experienced limited benefits and heightened service expectations after amalgamation. And in fact, larger amalgamated municipalities faced greater demands for services and infrastructure, increasing workforce sizes and operational costs. So while not, 100% conclusive, and we take all academic articles as they are, which is meant to be, observing the data, doing some analysis on the data. So I commend you to read that, and anyone who's interested in amalgamations. I think the bottom line is they're not necessarily a panacea for all of the problems that exist in our municipalities, but certainly one that comes up every once in a while as, something that will solve all of our problems. So should an amalgamation, annexation, some kind of restructuring move forward, the Regulation 20403 does set out a process for that amalgamation to happen, and appreciating that that's not what's going on in Niagara Region today. I won't spend a lot of time on this, but I did want to flag for you, in case you're interested, that there is an ability for the minister or a commission to set up and establish a board that would be charged with the transitional activities that are required to actually see through whatever kind of restructuring has been put forward. The minister or the commission would appoint those board members, so they have control over the composition of that transitional board. And the board would have the powers of the municipality in that circumstance. So anything the municipalities could do during that period of transition and transformation, perhaps, the board would have the statutory and legal authority to proceed with those kinds of things. And interestingly, they have the authority actually to execute on activities that would only come into being once the amalgamation occurs. So it's possible that they would essentially be creating their own bylaws, their own laws, to deal with those kinds of issues of, amalgamating services and bringing them together, although I'm not familiar with any circumstances where they've actually done that. So that's how it would, one way, anyways, of it getting started in terms of an actual restructuring. So as I mentioned earlier, in answer to your question, Councillor, in terms of preparing for discussions in the future, should any opportunities or challenges present themselves, in terms of our understanding of the data, the history, and the jurisprudence around this, we have these 5 essentially areas where we would encourage you to consider, looking at feasibility studies, data gathering, and considering governance structures related to these issues. And again, this isn't specific to Niagara Region. This is looking at the data across the entire province. Obviously, workforce and municipal staffing is one of the major considerations whenever you're having these discussions. What does a reassignment of roles, union relationships, collective agreements, all of those kinds of things come into play, of course, when you're talking about people involved with municipal restructuring. The second issue, again, broad category, is around the governance itself, needing to plan for the representation changes. What does that do to ward boundaries, council sizes, decision-making protocols, reporting structures, all of those kinds of things get captured in that second bucket of governance to consider. The processes themselves, in terms of financial systems, service delivery models, how does all of that work today? What would it look like in the future? What's the gap between the future state and the current state? And how long would it take to actually do some of the things that might be on the table, so to speak, with respect to municipal restructuring? Bylaws and policy alignment, obviously a major undertaking, depending on how many municipalities you're talking about when you're considering restructuring. I had the privilege of presenting and co-directing the Osgood Certificate of Municipal Law and Governance last month and earlier this month. And one of my co-directors is the City Solicitor for Toronto. And we were talking about the fact that she was a part of the team that was required to ensure that as of day one of the new City of Toronto, which of course is quite old now, which bylaws applied. Because you can imagine, just the chaos that would occur when you don't know what the law is when you've got some kind of amalgamated or newly created municipality. And then, of course, the last but certainly not least, question of infrastructure. Identifying and allocating physical assets, asset management plans, and all of the interaction that has to come with that. What's being credited to which municipalities, how are the liabilities being addressed? All of those kinds of questions, of course, are important to consider as you move into any kind of discussion around municipal restructuring. So, Your Worship, members of council, that was my presentation. I'm certainly happy to have go into any further depth that you'd like to, or answer any questions that you might have. But hopefully that gives you a high-level understanding of the legal framework that's involved with municipal restructuring and some of the best practices that we were able to discern from the historical examples.
Thank you very much for that. So members of council, Councillor Bradford, we'll start with you.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Thank you very much for your presentation. I had some questions, but a lot of them really focus around, and I'm sure my colleagues will have lots of different things, but strategic positioning is one of the reasons that I wanted to see somebody like yourself come here that has a depth of experience and understanding of these kinds of things that have happened in the past in Ontario. And is there examples of municipalities that have gone through a restructuring and how they have perhaps strategically positioned themselves and decisions that were made early in the process to help protect various local interests? And is there even any legal strategies that would be available to us?
Through your worship to the councillor, excellent question. And if it's okay, I'll answer it at the very sort of generic level, as opposed to getting into the specifics for West Lincoln or Niagara, because this is an education session. But where municipalities have, I would say, had the most influence over the ultimate decision that's getting made in these kind of conversations around municipal restructuring, I would say that there have been a few common elements. One, as I've said, is the data. So they come armed with not only the political understanding of the situation, but the operational data that can help with these conversations. So there's an assumption that, there are economies of scale. Bigger is better because you can be more efficient. You need one CAO instead of several, for example. Sorry, Trooper. But what does the data actually say about how this works? Can you, in fact, do some studies and modeling about what the financial impacts will be and the service impacts will be? The second thing is municipalities that are well positioned for these conversations understand what process they would like to undertake, how long that will take, and what does success look like. I've been involved with a number of negotiations where I think there may have been a misunderstanding or misalignment of what success looks like in the conversations and the negotiations. Is there a predetermined result that's required? And if so, can you be upfront about that, to your constituency, to your staff that are working on this? Thirdly, the communication aspect of this, I think, is critical. And where municipalities end up in the most sort of hot water is mixed messaging that comes from different municipalities around the same issues. Which, it can be hard to coordinate from an administrative perspective, the comms plan, but I highly recommend that be a part of the discussion and positioning when you're having these conversations with other municipalities. And then finally, as we've talked about, is the engagement. When will the engagement happen? And let's be really clear about that up front. Is it going to happen along the way? Are there certain, milestones in the project, if we can call it that there will be community and public consultation and engagement? It often feels like the cart before the horse in these conversations. And so, thinking through that purposefully and intentionally about when the engagement will happen with councils, with staff, with the public and other organizations, I think those are some of the strategic pieces that can help, influence the outcome as best as possible. And there would be specific other strategic considerations. Someone else. Related to West Lincoln, obviously, in the Niagara context, but we would have to talk about that at another time.
If I could have a follow-up as well. Thank you, through you, Mayor. In a general capacity, as this being an educational piece, various municipalities have functioned differently in their history, some being very fiscally responsible, others maybe not so. So generally speaking, if a municipality has been very fiscally responsible and they have in their bank accounts good solid numbers and good asset management, and are looking at possible amalgamation with the municipalities that maybe have not been as fiscally responsible, how would that type of responsible municipality protect itself and those assets that it could be possibly bringing to an amalgamation?
Through you, Your Worship, another excellent question. And so lawyers are careful not to pretend to be accountants or engineers, or at least best practice. So with that caveat, I would say from a financial perspective, the best way to articulate what it is that those prudent practices that you've been involved with are for is through your policies and bylaws. So one of the things that will happen naturally in any kind of conversation around municipal structuring is a review of your bylaws and your policies. And so to the extent that, for example, you have a municipality, generally speaking, that has a reserve fund, the more discretion that's involved with that reserve fund, the more likely it is that it's going to be scooped up into some kind of other purpose that perhaps council had not intentionally or initially intended. To the extent that it's very specific and that it's very clear about what the policy background and then the direction, that ought to be considered. There's no guarantee, but that ought to be considered as part of the discussions. Does that make sense?
Very much so, and that's very helpful. Thank you very much. That's all right now.
Well done, both of you, managing to keep that at a very high level. Okay, so on the side,
Through
Councilor
you, Madam Mayor, being new but also quite old in terms of being involved with the municipality, we did have a transition board in Hamilton. It was led by Marvin Ryder, a professor at McMaster. That process of planning, I believe, if I'm correct, was about 2 years. And then it was another 2 years of implementation where the various municipalities got together to come up with a plan that was the best possible plan, even though it was very difficult. Just my experience, when you become too large, it's difficult, and you could talk to people in Flamborough or Waterdown or Dundas. Things didn't happen quickly. It slowed down the process. As I said at a previous meeting, it becomes bureaucratic. I couldn't agree more with the Premier when he says, would turkeys vote for Thanksgiving? Highly not. That's why, and this is kind of a question back to you, we all believe strongly in a democratic process, or we wouldn't have ran for election, and we believe strongly that those that represent need to be represented by the people in terms of being elected. So in saying that, would you think, though, that a referendum should be the only way, even though there are other pathways, knowing that this is such a contentious issue and that it's an important one to our residents? And I think all residents from across Niagara should certainly have a say in this, other than just attend a public meeting and voice their opposition, but rather have a vote. Otherwise, it does seem forced, it does seem unfair, and when people are unwilling, that does create conflict and ill will of the taxpayer, who not only votes at the municipal level, but certainly votes at the provincial level.
Through you, Your Worship, another great question. And I would suggest to you, Councillor, that you're in the best position to determine what's in the best interest of your constituents. What I would say is that this is an election year, and so often in an election year, as you well know, there are conversations about what's an appropriate question, if any, to put on the ballot as well. It's a unique opportunity. It only happens every 4 years in our cycle right now to put something forward, and so it's I would say quite appropriate to be having the conversation about what, if anything, we want to be asking, because that opportunity doesn't exist every year.
Further to that, though, I'm going to go to the clerk. Isn't there a timing issue with a referendum question? Mr. Clerk?
Through the mayor, for the benefit of the rest of council as well, there can be a timing issue, obviously depending on when we get that direction. We are ever so closely getting to that point of May 2nd, or May 1st rather, where councillors can put in their names. We are getting close to a period in which it might become a little bit unfeasible to start suggesting that and to get it out to the people. However, again, up to the province whether or not, whether they're offering that or not.
Okay, thank you for that. But I do understand from previous discussions at the regional level that there was something about January 1st in terms of a referendum question for the upcoming election, but maybe we need to look into that further. Okay, thank you. Okay, the other side. Councillor Rayner, nothing further? Councillor Chichot? Councillor Riley?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I guess just to backpack to you, Madam Mayor, to Jason Rayner, our solicitor. So sorry, I was a little bit not right at 5 o'clock, as I probably mentioned at the beginning. I had another commitment, and when the schedule got pushed forward, I couldn't accommodate. But so I'm going to go back later tonight and watch the presentation and take this information here. I did want to just mention briefly, I guess a question to you, Madam Mayor, to the clerk, and just in relation to the question that was just asked regarding putting this on the ballot. I almost wonder if, regardless of what the province decides, you know, should they decide not to pursue it, I almost wonder if we'd be missing an opportunity still to have that on the ballot, regardless, just to be prepared and informed down the road. I think when we look at what possibly is looming in the direction of certain things may or may not go in, I don't think this topic is going to be, if the province decides not to act on it, I don't think this topic is going to be finished. So I think it would be a missed opportunity not to. So if, Madam Mayor, through you to the clerk, if you could just provide, and maybe you've already done this, and I apologize if I'm asking you to repeat yourself, the steps that would be necessary to take to have that particular item put on the ballot in this upcoming election, so that if there is a time restriction that we're meeting that. Does that make sense? I might have given you a little extra filler there, but I'm looking to see if we're still within the scope of being able to add this to the ballot, and how much time would you need to be notified, when we'd have to bring this to council to get it on the ballot, if that was still doable.
Mr. Clerk, through you.
Through the mayor, for the rest of council, I would have to look at the legislation again to review the timelines, as I'm not entirely certain for that type of question what the various timeline would be. However, I would also reiterate that it is a collective kind of effort. We would probably have to coordinate something like that with the rest of the region, as the information coming from our specific vote might not be, I would say, as worthwhile or as accurate as the rest of the region. If the region didn't agree to put that on their ballots as well, we don't have control over how they proceed with their ballots. I could get back to council with more information on that. However, I'm not aware of a specific timeline in which that we would have to breach.
Okay, thank you. And if I may, Madam Mayor, I feel like it's just in positioning West Lincoln in the best possible way. I almost wonder, you know, if we don't wait and necessarily figure out all the politicking that would have to take place to get every municipality in the region on board, if maybe West Lincoln kind of lead by example here, and if we focus on trying to get that on our ballot, and then we learn how to deal with that information after the election, should something else be done with. Like, again, with the election really just around the corner, and everyone already going to the polls, why wait for a situation that might happen after the fact, only to have to try to figure out whoever that next term of council is, have them have to weigh in on that. So I would be in favor of at least giving the direction for the clerk to look into that, Madam Mayor, if that would be satisfactory to the rest of council, and maybe report back to us if it's not too unreasonable to ask sometime in April, maybe the April council, if a month is sufficient enough for you, at least get some information there. I know it might be even cutting it closer to that May 1st timeline, so it might be more ideal to get back sooner, but again, I don't know how much work's involved, so if I could put that out there for consideration, that'd be great. And I did want to mention one other thing, Madam Mayor, as I caught the tail end of the conversation here, one of the questions regarding policy decided during the process of negotiating during the amalgamation aspect of it. I think it's also important to highlight that whatever happens, should we be forced into amalgamation, should that be the decision of the councils or just the decision of the province, policy is changeable. So whatever decisions, whatever things we negotiate 4 years after the fact, can be changed, can be amended, and I think there's enough evidence out there to indicate when other municipalities have been put into amalgamation that other resources, other things that they position themselves to protect have slowly disappeared over time, and they don't have those things. So to Councillor Braderick's concerns there regarding the fiscally responsible municipalities versus those who maybe struggle with temptation, again, I feel like you're going to have a situation regardless where we're going to be just subject to the direction or the will of that future council, whatever that municipality looks like. So I kind of, as much as I hear, that can be negotiated and that can be determined by policy, policy is 100% changeable, and then following elections or following years of different amalgamated communities, again, I feel like that stuff gets lost. So I guess I'm just making a statement of concern because I don't really know how we protect our assets, our well-planned decision-making when we're going to be married or into a forced marriage, potentially into a forced marriage with another municipality or several that may not have the same restraints or vision as we did for ours. But again, it is what it is. We'll have to see where the province kind of lands with some of this stuff. But I definitely have some serious concerns how we move forward with all this, as the rest of you do. So thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So, Your Worship, I just, to perhaps save Mr. Palov a little bit of work, it does look like the legislation, the Municipal Elections Act, requires that a ballot question be submitted by March 1st in the year of a regular election. So it does look like that
I
date.
thought that we were past that date, but I didn't know exactly what the date was. Thank you for that, so. Which doesn't mean perhaps that there can't be some kind of an unofficial ballot of some sort that we can still do. Maybe we look at it from that perspective. And maybe that's something that perhaps, to Mr. CAO, that the group that are looking at working forward put together. Thank you. Councillor Bradrick, back to you.
Yes, just a point of clarification for Councillor Riley. When the question came up about, that I had asked the legal counsel about the preparing ourselves, I think he gave a bit of an example of how a municipality could dictate some clear boundaries around their reserve in order to perhaps give some clarity to how that reserve was to be used, and maybe in some ways look at a way of protecting some of the assets that a municipality may bring into a forced amalgamation if it was to happen. So through you to Mayor, the Mayor to the Council, if you could confirm that for me.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Councillor Chichot.
I listened with great interest to the work that the questions are being asked, and I can't help but think that a very well-prepared municipality would be best to, and Mr. Rayner did mention briefly the FIRs, which are the financial information reports that are filed by all municipalities by a certain date, unless they want to be in trouble with the province, and that happens. In fact, some people I know have failed to do it, but that aside, a review of a study, whether it be independent or it be done by a municipality getting ready for an amalgamation, because there's a closeout date. So all those policies and all that money that's in a reserve at some point is said to be part of the discussion. It's done. You can't touch it. So a lot of municipalities go out and spend it before an amalgamation. Others keep hoarding or saving. But regardless, there's a shutdown date that we would have to worry about. But before that, and before we got to an amalgamation, or before we asked whether or not a question on a ballot or elsewise would be wise, it might be useful for us to look at our colleagues' FIRs and to look at what their cost and their split between industrial, commercial, residential, multi-res kind of taxes are, and how much farmland they have, and how many miles of roads they have. And I'm not trying to wax on. What I'm saying is we need to know what it costs us to run our community, and as well as others. And when we find out, some might have great industrial bases or may not. Industrial pays 3 times the taxes. I've said this before, but it's nice to know who you're getting wanting to court with by knowing, 1, what their debt load is, 2, how do they generate money? Is it fees? And by how much are they balancing their budgets by charging wampum fees, or how much they're making from residential versus the commercial, and how do you attract the future? What's our state and our growth? Because we have yet to grow. Do we want to attract new businesses? And do we want them to come before more residential brown-related product? These are just the questions that we don't have answers to. And if our staff could take the FIRs for the past few years, and whether individually or we paid a consultant, which usually would happen, and the province, if they were going to do it for us, would send in an independent group of people, which is a great way for it to happen. And don't get me wrong, Your Worship, as you know, like Councillor Maychuk, I've had a fair experience, as with our legal counsel. But what I would say is we are the best to know what we can find in the books of other people. And when we do, even if it's wrong or inaccurate or not absolutely 100%, it tells us that we are as good, better, worse, and if we put everybody together, the sum total is we could double the taxes of our people, or we could cut them in half. But if we don't know that, then just on a handshake or feeling good, which is the whole problem I saw with this whole walk down Amalgamation Lane that Niagara chose, I have no idea whether some of the total is better than its parts. But I'd like to know that, and I believe that if we were really want, we could get those FIRs from the province online. So I think now we need to be the best judges of what it is we want to see.
Well, I appreciate your comment, and I appreciate the comments from all members of council. I think that for the sake of the public, since you're here, though, Mr. Rayner, that I want to reiterate that the decision of this council was that we were not in support of amalgamation. Not that we shouldn't do our homework, and I think some of the discussion that we've had sort of lends itself to perhaps people misunderstanding and thinking that we are leaning that way. We need to be prepared in any case moving forward. But at this point in time, at the regional level, a couple of the municipalities have backed away from the notion of amalgamation at this current time and are looking at ways to work together to actually do something about some of the issues at the region. Now, we have regional council this week, and we'll be able to report back more about that perhaps after that meeting. But that is the intent. We are very intent on finding out from our residents on Wednesday of this week what our feelings are and what their feelings are about moving forward. And I just hesitate with this education session to just leave it without reiterating that for those who might watch it later and think, what's all this talk about amalgamation? It is not a done deal. It's a long way from being a done deal. But the understanding as presented to us tonight is it could be something that is done to us without us having much say. So we certainly need to be prepared for that as well. Councillor Maychap.
Yes, Madam Mayor, just a question, and I'm not leaning either way. It's more of a decision of yourself and the CAO, but on Wednesday, where we gather public input, has our MPP been invited? He certainly values and respects the opinion of West Lincoln residents, and I was just curious if Sam has been invited Wednesday, just to hear what people have to say, not to put him on the hot seat by any means, but just to listen and to have a better understanding of what our local residents might be saying on the topic.
So many of our no, he's not been specifically invited because the legislature is back sitting this week. And traditionally we know that Monday to Thursday, Sam is in Toronto. Friday he tries to be in his office in the constituency. But with them just sitting this week, I don't know if he even will be back on Friday. But many of the residents who have been already sending emails have copied Sam on emails, so he is well aware. And I would advise that others continue to do the same as those emails are coming. And certainly he will be advised of whatever comes out of our meeting on Wednesday at 5. Councillor Chichok again.
Your Worship, I can't reiterate your point exactly. Any comments I made were not in favor of anything but the best defense is a good offense.
Exactly.
Or the best offense is a good defense, whichever way you want to say it. But really, we are, all I'm saying is that we need to get our facts together so that when others come at us saying, well, look what you'd save. I think Mr. Rayner has made some very good points about the average cost of wages going up to the highest average of a newly amalgamated unit. So we need to know those things so that we can stand firm on the fact that we are not in favor of amalgamation at the cost of reducing services or the ability of our ratepayers to be happy with the way we represent them.
Thank you. Okay, I think then we are done for now, but stay with us because we know we're going also into closed session. So thank you very much for that presentation. But we do have another confidential item that we need to move into. I need a mover to move into confidential. Councillor Chichok. And a seconder to go to confidential. Councillor Bradrick, thank you. So the motion reads that the next portion of this meeting be closed to the public to consider the following pursuant to Section 239, subsection 2 of the Municipal Act, 2001. Again, the applicable closed session, litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board, and advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. So we have a mover and a seconder. Just a show of hands to go into confidential, please. And so we will now declare that we're moving into a confidential session. Albert, stay tuned. We got comfortable chairs out there. Yeah, I see John's gone to find some dinner, and Okay, so welcome back, everyone. We're back in open session, and I'm going to turn to the clerk for the disclosure of confidential matters that needs to be done publicly. Mr. Clerk.
Through the mayor, for the rest of council, council deliberated and agreed upon a resolution that I will read out now, that council direct administration to defend the position of the Committee of Adjustment before the OLT, including delegating the authority to the CAO or his designate to negotiate a settlement, and 2, that administration return to council for approval of any settlement proposed.
Okay, thank you. So that takes us to number 10 on our agenda, which is our regional councilor's remarks. So welcome, Councillor Woodavine.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a short update. It's been pretty light at the region this past month, so I use that time to meet with Director Tassone, being that we always have our traffic concerns here, and automated speed cameras have been taken away for traffic calming measures. So I spoke with Frank, and the province has given funds to the region to take different initiatives for traffic safety in our community, and Frank and I discussed about these portable speed indicators. As most of you know, I do some part-time driving, and I said these indicators that flash that show you the speed you're driving, and I said probably Region Road 65 could use probably 2 or 3 of them. So what Frank and I agreed we would work towards setting up a portable speed indicator, and that would gather information on, I guess, driver behavior, and if we feel that that drivers need this, I guess, warning and notification, that they would look at installing a permanent sign, just like you would when we were in Camden and that. And I know near Joanne and Mike and Anne-Marie's place there that the accidents at the intersection, and I said that we should strategically place that, because we can paint lines on the road and we can put more signs up, but I think those methods haven't proved to work successfully. So this was something. And we also discussed about the traffic signals at South Guernsey Road 18 and Highway 20. There was concerns from a number of residents in the last year about people trying to cross over Highway 20 there at Fulton, and as this council has approved that being I guess a development area for light industry, and the region also said that this area did warrant a traffic signal, and Frank says the signal will stay green on Highway 20 till somebody comes to 18 to basically change that and wants to cross over. So he felt, they're going to proceed with that, and I know we all want to make, just slow people down a bit, And the other thing that came up was actually through this winter that we discussed was Highway 20 and South Guernsey Road 8. So I told Frank that the township was going to do some work on South Guernsey Road 8, and I believe that we need to review the intersection at Highway 20. There's a very short runway coming from Hamilton to try to get off, and then there's people leaving South Guernsey Road 8 to get to 12 to do the jog, and they can't see, and so they're kind of, as I say, doing a bit of a Hail Mary. They're not sure if people are going through or trying to make that right-hand turn. So he did look at that length of, I will say, off-ramp. So I suggested, I'm no expert in that, that we should forward this on to Peter Vujic, which is our regional rep, and Mike DePaula, and to review this intersection and see how we can make it safer, because with the township improving that, I believe that it will just encourage higher use, and so they're going to come out to Highway 20. We know a lot of traffic comes out to Highway 20, does the jog up the road, and then goes down 12. So I think that it gives us an opportunity. I know this winter there was a number of, we'll call it incidents at that intersection. When the weather's not friendly, it's hard to maybe get grip and get out there fast enough, but I think it definitely was something that, you know, obviously it's up the road from me, and I've seen the challenges over the year and seen the trucks, the feed trucks, the egg trucks, and trying to mitigate that. And it's kind of a bit of a busy area, so if we can get the region to make some improvements while we're making improvements, hopefully we can make that intersection safer for our residents at the same time. So anyways, I wanted to just update you, took that opportunity to meet with the Director of Transportation. I'll follow up with him, and if any councillors see any more, I know Councillor Braderick, there are some issues with speeding in the St. Anne's, and it's, I think there's work being done there, so it's hard to understand what the real problem is while it's kind of a major project there. So thank you for responding. And I, obviously we had the police here, so I've seen the police out and about. After our last conversation, we had Police Chief Forty here. I've been keeping an eye out, and as I'm out and about in the municipality, and I have seen I'll say a good presence of police officers actually doing their job, pulling people over downtown and in people that are speeding and being unsafe. So I just, I guess my focus this month was trying to look at traffic safety and trying to come up with some ideas to make our community safer for the future. So if any councillors down the road see any areas, please bring them to my attention. If they're on regional roads, I'll follow up with Frank and hopefully follow up on this conversation. So, Madam Mayor, that's my report for this evening.
Thank you very much for that. And I think it is important that we all work together on that. When people notice things, that we make sure that we do that. And I will just say, Albert does chair Public Works, but it isn't in those meetings sometimes that you're able to actually push forward what it is. It's often in those sidebar conversations where you're just asking what's going on and what are you thinking about and are you following through on, such as the stoplight would be a good example of that. So thank you very much for that work. Are there any questions about any of those roads? Councillor Maychant.
Through the chair, a real quick one. I also saw the police presence where one of the two community zones where there was radar. So I would just encourage to the police, especially when the kids are coming out of school and going into school, that practice continue if they're able to, just because I noticed a number of people were slowing down and concerns after the radar came down that some people were starting to sped up. So to think that the police might be there, I think is a big deterrent. So thank you.
Welcome.
Anything further? Okay. Thank you, Councillor Whittabine. That takes us to number 11, which is the confirmation of minutes from the council meeting on February 23rd. And Councillor Rayner, you have the resolution?
Yes, Madam Mayor, that the minutes relating to the moved by myself, that the minutes relating to the February 23rd, 2026 council meeting and the recommendations contained therein be accepted.
Thank you. And someone to second that? Councillor Riley? Thank you. Are there any questions or comments about those minutes? Okay, seeing none. Mr. Clerk? This is the first, just taking a bit to, oh, there we go. Okay, and that carries. Number 12 are communications. 12.1 is the West Lincoln Age-Friendly Advisory Committee minutes. And Councillor Maychak, you have that resolution?
Moved by myself that the West Lincoln Age-Friendly Advisory Committee meetings dated February 6th be received.
Thank you. And someone to second those minutes? Councillor Riley? Any questions or comments about the minutes? Seeing none, Mr. Clerk, please. And that also carries. 12.2 are the Director, Growth and Sustainability, Garrett Borma. The resolution requiring land, when it's talking about the Wade Road property owned by Phelps Homes. Councillor Rayner, you have the resolution?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I hope everybody doesn't get confused with the letters and the numbers, but there's a lot of them in this one. Moved by myself that council, as per Article 4 of the Minutes of Settlement approved by the OMB for case number PL 170875, accept the transfer of lands identified in Schedule B of said minutes and legally described as Part 8, Plan M97, as confirmed by PL 30BA 1694, being Part 6 on 30R 14063, I'm sure everybody knows that, and being Part 6 on 30R 14109, save and accept Part 1 on 30R 15840, Township of West Lincoln be accepted by the Township.
Well done, Councillor. Okay. Someone to second that resolution. Councillor Broderick. Thank you.
It's all numbers.
Okay, any questions or comments about that parcel of land? So I think for the clarity that we will just say to the public that this is the piece of land that's being given over to the municipality based on the end of Wade Road. So it is a little bit wordy, that's for sure. Councillor.
Madam Mayor, I think we'll just scratch our heads and say, sure, we'll support this. Thank you.
All right, we're ready. And after you vote, we'll ask you all to recite what it was that you voted on? I think not. And that also carries. Okay. And that takes us to 13, which are my remarks for the month. And since our last council meeting on February 23rd, West Lincoln teams, consisting of a combination of staff and council members, have supported Big Brothers Big Sisters youth initiatives through taking part in the Tim Hortons Bowling for Kids' Sake Municipal Challenge on February 25th, and also the YWCA Support for Women and Children in Need through this year's Coldest Night of the Year walk on Saturday, February 28th. I would like to thank the members of council, the members of the public, and the staff members who supported these events, either through their own participation or through their generous sponsorship of those who actually did participate. On Friday the 27th, West Lincoln was represented at a table consisting of both staff and council members, including Regional Councillor Whittabine, for the State of the Region address by former Regional Chair Bob Gale. That's all I'm saying. On Friday, March 6th, I was pleased to have Councillor Chichok and 3 members of senior staff join me in representing West Lincoln through attending the International Women's Day event in Niagara Falls. The next day, Saturday, March 7th, John joined me at regional headquarters to take part in a local International Women's Day recognition event hosted by the Niagara chapter of Equal Voice, a Canada-wide organization. That same day, John and I attended by invitation from our local Muslim community a community iftar, or breaking of the Ramadan fast. This event was attended by Regional Chair Gale and Regional CAO Ron Tripp, officials from the NRPS, including our own Staff Sergeant from District 8, Dylan Bourgeois, and Mayor Sandra Easton. This event represented outreach from this faith community, some of whom are West Lincoln residents, to try to promote a better understanding of both our similarities and our differences. At the same event, I was invited to attend an upcoming session for young people to be held at the Fleming Library. Once again, this was an attempt to have members of the broader community grow to understand our Muslim neighbors and friends. I did stop by that event on the afternoon of March 17th and was pleased to see some West Lincoln residents in attendance at that event with their granddaughter. I also attended the official opening of the new office of Niagara Nutrition Partners on the Thorold-Pelham border last week, and was pleased to learn that they are now working with healthy snack programs in all West Lincoln public and Catholic schools. Transportation, especially the lack of public transportation, is a topic of concern to West Lincoln residents, and being well aware of that, I attended a regional virtual training session where the Niagara Transportation to 2051 plan was being discussed. On that same topic, Councillor Riley and I also had a meeting last week with Jordan Hamilton from the Niagara Transit Commission to discuss our needs for the future and the importance of those needs being included in their 10-year capital plan moving forward. A step in this direction via an upcoming resolution will be coming to this council in the near future. Again this year, Councillor Chichok and John and I attended, although not on the same night, the annual Niagara Christian Gleaners fundraising dinners. It's always amazing to see that several hundreds of supporters are fed at each of these 2 dinners, people who have all come together to support this amazing outreach to those throughout the world who are desperately in need of food, including the Canadian Far North and most recently Cuba. I have just these last few days learned that they were able to raise approximately $155,000 over the 2 nights combined. It makes me very proud that we have this highly recognized and so well-regarded enterprise making their home in West Lincoln. I also had the privilege of raising the flag in support of Happy in My Home / Meals on Wheels, and taking part in the Mayor's annual ride-along to deliver meals to our local residents on Wednesday, March 18th. Having just recently passed the new initiative of partnering with the Y to provide programming for our March break day camp, I stopped by, as I hear, did some of my councillor colleagues, to see how things were going. I was very pleased to hear that the kids, their parents, and our staff were all pleased. Kudos to all involved in the various activities being run this past week. Thank you also to the various local businesses who sponsored ice time for free public skating during the week. Pardon me. I also had the opportunity to speak with the Brunicioni family to see if they felt it had been in their best interest to have their canteen open during the week. They were delighted to see how busy the entire building was during the March break week, as various events and activities were being held, and they additionally were pleased with how this activity was beneficial to their business. I want to state just what an overall enjoyable experience the library's murder mystery dinner held at the Smithville branch on Friday evening was for all who were in attendance. The theme was set in the Roaring '20s, and attendees rose to the occasion, with most arriving in fantastic costumes. The exception would be John and I think one other person who did not have fantastic costumes. Everyone got into the spirit of their assigned characters. Dinner was delicious, and the laughter was plentiful. A special thanks to library staff member Sarah McCarthy for organizing and running this sold-out, fun-filled event. And finally, I want councillors, staff, and residents to know that we continue to work toward governance reform at the regional level. West Lincoln does not support any type of forced amalgamation. The mayors and CAOs of the 8 municipalities who signed the letter sent to the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, also addressed to the Premier, are working on a plan that moves forward the initiative of maintaining each of our unique municipalities, balanced with looking for fact-based, financially sound, data-driven solutions to issues at the regional level of governance. We are trying to find long-term solutions that will actually prove to be financially beneficial to residents, rather than quick, unproven, presupposed fixes. West Lincoln Council and staff want and need to hear from residents regarding opinions, and we are looking forward to hearing either via email or in person from as many West Lincoln residents as possible on Wednesday of this week, starting at 5 p.m. here in our council chambers. And that's the end of my remarks. And we'll go now to 14, which is reports of committees. So 14.1, sorry. Councillor Bradrick, you have Growth and Sustainability Committee.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Moved by myself that the minutes relating to the March 2nd, 2026 Growth and Sustainability Committee meeting be accepted.
Thank you. And someone to second those minutes. Councillor Maychak. Are there any questions or comments about those minutes? Okay, all righty. And the vote should be in front of you. And that carries. The Infrastructure Committee minutes, Councillor Riley, you have those.
I do, Madam Mayor. Moved by myself that the minutes relating to the March 2nd, 2026 Infrastructure Committee meeting be accepted.
Thank you. And someone to second those minutes? Councillor Bradrick. Are there any questions or comments regarding those minutes? No? Seeing none, Mr. Clerk. Somebody's still waiting? Oh, now it's up. Okay, that also carries. 14.3 are the Corporate Services Committee minutes, and Councillor Bradrick, you have those.
Yes, that the minutes relating to the March 9th, 2026 Corporate Service Committee meeting be accepted.
Thank you. And someone to second those minutes, please? Councillor Maychak. Questions or comments about those minutes? Okay, moving right along. We're ready for the vote, Mr. Clerk. Did it come up a little bit late?
Yeah, it just popped up. I just reset my system.
Oh, maybe that's why. Okay, well, that also carries, which takes us to 14.4, Community and Protective Services Committee minutes from March 9th, and Councillor Maychak.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. That the minutes relating to the March 9th, 2026 Community and Protective Services Committee meeting be accepted.
Thank you. And someone to second those? Councillor Riley, thank you. Are there any questions or comments about those minutes? And seeing none, Mr. Clerk. Good thing you're ready. And those also carry. So item 15 is a reconsideration, and we have nothing tonight. And 16 is a notice of motion to rescind, and we also have nothing, which takes us to 17, which is other business from members of council. And so I'll start with you, Councillor Maychak. Do you have anything this evening?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just quickly, thank you for mentioning the success of the March Break program and the partnership with the Y. I believe it's towards the end of this week that if West Lincoln residents want to sign up for summer camp, that's coming up, and I encourage them because, as we noted when Cynthia presented, that West Lincoln residents get priority, and it's important that they sign up their kids early or their children early to guarantee a spot, knowing that the summer program is going to be highly successful, and a lot of people will be looking to register their children.
Thank you for that, Councillor. Councillor Bradrick.
I too wanted to congratulate the March Break program. Had a chance to drop in during the week and saw lots of happy faces. I also saw a new addition to the lobby area, which is a ping pong table. So small, but definitely goes a long way in creating a really nice, welcoming, active opportunity that is inclusive for residents of all ages. You know, it's those little things, and I've been kind of trying to champion those small things behind the scenes since I became a councillor, as I see that as such a great community hub and an opportunity that encourages, you know, connections within our community, and saw that happening more and more as the time has come on with some change in direction.
Thank you. And thank you for pointing that out. And I will just tell you that it's not a new purchase, in case somebody's thinking that we purchased something. There's another one actually as well that have been in storage for a period of time, just waiting for the right opportunity, I think, to put them out. So I understand that the second one might go out sometime soon as well. So thank you for that. Councillor Riley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll just mention briefly that on, I think it was March 4th, Councillor Maychuk and I were able to attend. Actually, maybe on your behalf, I know you weren't available that day. I think you had some other pressing matters to deal with, but we were able to attend the Niagara Engineering technical session and luncheon, so we were able to attend that. And I mentioned that briefly. I know, Mr. Gale was unfortunately not able to attend that, even though they were expecting him to be there. And then I just want to mention, just today being the Crossing Guard, School Crossing Guard Appreciation Day, province-wide. I think it's worth noting and giving a shout-out to all of our not the volunteers, but all of our crossing guards for the service they do. You know, sometimes it's a thankless job at times, and they have to brave the weather and the challenges of dealing with the traffic, and I think, we're very grateful to have them and their dedication to the service.
You don't mean the heavy rain and the heavy snow and the heavy rain and the heavy snow.
The four seasons sometimes.
And the winds.
All in once, so.
Exactly. They do a marvelous job under terrible circumstances some days. Thank you. Okay, Councillor Chichok, anything this evening?
Well, actually, Madam Mayor, yes, there are. There are a couple of things. Number one is to, it was on April 22nd, there is a function happening at the Agricultural Society where we understand that there'll be a very illustrious and eloquent speaker providing the main topics at the Mayor's Luncheon. The Chamber is putting on the Mayor's Luncheon that day, and it starts at 11:30 in the morning, and there are tickets available through the Chamber of Commerce on their website if you want to book some. The Chamber is looking very much forward, and it sounds like it's going to be another great event. I only know from attending their meetings that that they have a chef doing the lunch, and that they are planning to have decorations and suitable for that event, but really trying to put out a great effort this year, again, to welcome people from West Lincoln as well as West Niagara to come and hear you speak. So sharpen your pen.
Thank you. I have been working on that and cutting down. Anyway, but yeah, hopefully it's good. And just for the members of council to know, the topic will be essentially a report card on this term of council.
Right.
So, an anecdotal report card, I will say, by the way, not a good old ABC.
Good. It's a luncheon, not dinner. No.
Exactly.
I also have a second thing that I wanted to bring to everyone's attention. It's just rather new out. Niagara Farm Day on May 9th. It's a Saturday from 10 to 3, again at the West Niagara Agricultural Center, which is, it's fun for the whole family. It happens every year, and it's put on by the Niagara North Federation of Agriculture. And there's lots to see, lots to do, everything to do with agriculture, and a surprise visit from the 4-H food booth, which will be on site that day for back bacon and milkshakes.
Glad to hear it's still operational.
It's, yes, it's wonderful news. So that is coming out again, May 9th, 10 to 3 at the Ag Society, and it's a free event. But you do buy your, it's a free event, but buy your tickets. No, it's actually, you register through Eventbrite for that event. And as usual, I'm sure it'll be a great day for kids.
Sure, thank you. Councilor Rayner, do you have anything this evening? Okay. Well, I have just one that I want to add that I was not aware of when I actually put my remarks together. So I did mention last month that I was part of the judging panel for the Legion Elementary School public speaking contest, their speech contest, and I just learned via email and then in person that the two winners, first in the primary division and then in the junior division, went on to win at the next level as well, and then again are now going on to provincial. So one of those was Juliana Riley, and the other was a young lady whose name is Madeline DeJong. And so those two girls are going on again to represent West Lincoln at the next level. And the Legion, of course, is very proud that the two of the girls who started off at their local level are now moving on. Did you want to say anything further?
So I
Councillor
will.
Wright?
I think, yeah. So there's a lot of learning. This is the second year they're doing it, and so I think the first level is considered the branch level, and the next level is zone.
Zone.
I don't know where you got your information, but neither girls were successful, unfortunately, to move on to the area. Provincials is the one that comes after. Madeline came second in her category, and Juliana came fourth in her category at that
So
third
there's
level.
Third level. Okay,
Yeah.
well, so actually, it was just on Saturday that they told me, so.
Yeah, because Saturday afternoon is when they had the event, and it was like a very competitive, like these speeches were like next level.
It gets more and more competitive,
So the one girl, actually, if I can, one of the seniors, I forget her name right now, Soya, I think her name is, who was there last year, went up to Julie and she said, "Oh, I recognize you," and they were chatting, and so we asked how she did, because she moved on last year onto the area round, and she said, "Oh, I won provincials." And this is this bright young lady who just really well spoken. So I know my daughter was looking up to her and on, and so she moved on again. This is her chance to move on to what I think it's called the area, and then if they move on from there, then they go to provincials. But I just wanted to clarify that they did exceptionally well. It was some really tough competition, but unfortunately weren't able to move on to the next level.
Well, you know
so
what?
get some.
I think that the Legion is so pleased that they brought back speeches, because for a little while it was dwindling.
Yes.
And they've tried to keep it going again. So I think probably they're just overly excited that not only did they win at the Smithville Legion, but they won when they moved on.
Yeah.
And I think that perhaps they were unaware of the next level. But
Yeah, well, and it is a little bit confusing for those, like the way how the process is judged and everything else. A lot of that stuff, that information, I don't know how it is. 'Cause I know when Juliana and Madeline first moved on from, I guess, zone, they had their names mixed as well on their thing, and so it was like I reached out and said, "Oh, listen, like you got the right people moved on, but they swapped the names because my daughter's a little bit on the shorter side, and the other girl's a little tall for her age group, so you'd assume." But anyways, I have to say, like, it's such an excellent event. Anybody who's ever thought about encouraging their kids to go do it, the amount of confidence they gain standing in front of a room of like I think last year, I remember there being like over 100 people. I think it was about the same at the zone level, or at the zone level. Sorry, at the district. So it goes from branch, zone, district. So at the district level, it's like a much bigger room and a lot more people. And like these kids are anywhere between grade 1 to grade 3, is that primary
That's
level?
primary, and then
these
4,
kids-
5, 6 is
Yeah,
junior.
and then they kind of just, they're up there, and it's amazing how they can just block out the distractions, and it always amazes me, because you hear someone's phone go off, or conveniently someone drops something in the background, and his parents are just holding a breath, hoping they don't, throw them off guard, but they do really well, and these kids should be very proud of themselves,
They should
regardless
be.
on how they
And I think, in
finish.
fairness, the Legion members who organized that and put it together are extremely proud. And I was really pleased to have been part of it, just to see them get started, and to hear that they did well the next time was good too, so.
Yeah, and
thank
I'm
you.
sure maybe just the communication of when they moved on to zone to districts might have been, maybe where the confusion
Maybe
lied there.
maybe they were excited before the rest happened.
Yes, yeah, but
In
we
any
were,
case,
we-
still good, still good.
absolutely.
Okay, so takes us then, we have no items of business, new business that I think are coming forward this evening, so we'll go to bylaws. And Councillor Bradrick, you have the bylaws.
Yes, I do, Madam Mayor. Thank you. Moved by myself, 1, that leave be granted to introduce bylaws 2026-10, 2026-11, 2026-12, 2026-13, 2026-14, 2026-15, and 2026-16 and that the same shall be considered to have been read a first, second, and third time with one reading and are hereby adopted. And 2, that the mayor and clerk be and are hereby authorized to sign and affix a corporate seal thereto, any rule of this council to the contrary notwithstanding.
Okay, thank you for that. Someone to second bylaws. Councillor Riley, just 1 second. I know that you can't do that.
All right, 'cause I wanna-
Yeah, I know you do. I know you do. So Councillor Chichok, can we get you to second the bylaws, please? Okay, so I am going to now, Councillor Riley.
Okay, thank you. And so I'm just going to go through back to the clerk to clarify. So I believe it's 19.2 and 19.3, bylaws 2026-11 and 2026-12. These are the ones that I had to disclose a perceived conflict because I was unable to attend the meeting as required to the Planning Act. Am I understanding that I would still have to disclose a similar conflict at this point as well?
Yes.
Yes.
And not vote on those.
And I
bylaws.
can't participate in those?
Yep.
Okay, so then at this
Good.
point, I declare that perceived conflict.
Okay, thank you for that. And Councillor Rayner.
Thank you, Mayor, Madam Mayor. I also wish to have bylaw 2026-11 and 2026-12 pulled. I'd like to speak on it and vote separately, please.
Okay, so since you're pulling them, we would vote separately anyway, so go ahead.
I may proceed
Your
at this time.
reason for pulling them, yeah?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've got a prepared write-up that I have, much like the mayor's opportunity to speak.
Well, maybe not. Don't compare them.
You haven't heard it yet.
I know, that's why I said, don't compare them.
Okay, what I'd like to say is why I supported the Township of West Lincoln Planning Department's recommendation 3 weeks ago regarding the College Street Development Project. At that time, Township staff followed the Planning Act, and the CAO correctly stated that if we oppose our planning staff's recommendation, we would be required to hire an outside planner to go against our own planners, which would be very expensive. And at the OLT, our hired planner would have to prove that there was an error in the Planning Act and therefore our staff erred, and this would be near impossible to prove since the Planning Act is what it is. So we would lose at the OLT, and that would cost the taxpayers a lot of money. Based on that discussion, I felt that this is a no-win situation. I can't support losing the money from the taxpayers, so I supported not proceeding. But after this, I thought about it. I was awake in the middle of the night saying, that's just not me. I've always gone by what my gut feel was. Immediately after voting, I realized that I always have been a person who stands by what I believe in, regardless of what other people say or think or do. And we had an open public meeting whereby the public could express their concerns.
Okay,
And
we're not rehashing the whole issue. Just tell us what you've now decided that you no longer want to support it?
well, there are so many things with regards to this, Madam Mayor, that would have such a negative effect on the
No, well,
township.
that's what we're not going to go into, because we've made a decision. You've pulled the bylaw, so you can not vote for the bylaw if you wish. But we're not going to rehash the public meeting, sir.
Well, could we have a clarification with the
I
clerk?
think we can have a
Because I spoke to the clerk
clarification
and
from
he
the
said
clerk.
I had an opportunity to
think you-
speak so
well-
long as I did not do anything that reflected negatively on staff or decisions. I was
Not
allowed to speak.
completely. I think you have the ability to pull this. You have the ability to say that you've changed your mind, and that's fine. But we do not need to rehash all your reasons based on but I'll go to the clerk.
Through the chair, Councilor Rayner can express his opinion on the matter, but cannot rehash new arguments on the basis of the public meeting, as the public meeting is now closed. Council has made their decision. You can express that you have changed your mind, but cannot be making new arguments for the rest of council to be dissuaded or persuaded on this matter. So personal feelings towards your own personal vote is acceptable. However, making new arguments on the basis of the planning
Okay,
application
then that's fair.
would not be acceptable.
Then my personal feeling is that this is creating a hornet's nest in town that is going to have massive
No,
traffic
now that's
implications.
still what you can't say.
Why? Because
Be- no,
that's my feeling. The clerk said I'm allowed to say what I feel.
I think
I'm
the
just
clerk
telling you
is
what I
trying
feel.
to, no, I think the clerk is telling you, you are allowed to say, I no longer support that.
But wouldn't you
we
love
are
to know
not-
the explanation why?
No, no.
You don't really care.
You
That's
had-
why we're in what we're in. Fine. Can I please have a recorded vote on this
You
thing?
certainly can.
All
You
right, and
certainly
we'll just
can.
drop, you know my feelings. Down the road, we're going to regret this decision because it is going to ruin this town, but go ahead.
It is on a brown field that is allowed to do something, and we are, I'm not going to argue with you, and I don't want you to argue with me. You are
I didn't want to
able,
argue in the first place. You're the one that started this. If you'd have just let me speak, we would be fine.
no, if I'd let you speak, we could have been in some trouble, because I was worried about what else you were going to say. So this is by.
We're
this-
defending the people and the taxpayers who
No.
elected us. How can I be wrong?
No, we're not, because you are wrong at this time.
Fine,
Thank
and
you.
just do the vote.
Go ahead.
So this will be
We're
the vote for bylaws 2026-11 and 2026-12 specifically. The rest will be voted on separately.
That's
And I
right.
will note that Councilor Riley has a conflict for this
Thank
vote
you.
and will not
Okay.
be able to
So
vote.
please call the vote.
Mayor Ganan,
Support.
Councilor Bradrick,
Support.
Councilor Rayner,
Do not support.
Councilor Chichok,
Support.
Councilor Maychak. That vote carries.
Thank you. And now the rest of the bylaws, please. And Councilor Riley, you will vote on the other bylaws, yeah. Okay, so the rest of the bylaws,
Through the mayor, again, just noting that this is bylaw 2026-10, 2026, sorry, let me bring it up again. I think I deleted the wrong one.
okay.
2026-10, 2026-13, 2026-14, 2026-15, and 2026-16. And I will note again that Councilor Riley may vote on these bylaws.
Thank you.
And I can
Okay.
open that vote if
You
you
can
like.
open that vote.
Come up.
Yeah.
Mine didn't come up. Mad at me.
Okay, and that also carries.
Now it came up. See? I don't know.
Okay, and so with all the bylaws looked after and the rest of the business, I will declare this meeting adjourned at the hour of 7:54. We're in